Okay, we're back. We just talked about form fills. Now we're going to talk about spell check. Pretty neat little thing that Eclipse has. So you can spell check a word, or you can spell check the definition of the word, or the spelling alternatives, or spell check the whole document. So if if you have something in there and you typed it in, it's like, I don't know if that's how it's spelled. It's not really, I mean, it is going to matter because Eclipse is going to underline it for you. If it's misspelled, it's going to underline it for you. But it may be a word that it doesn't recognize that is correct, that it doesn't recognize. So it's going to be, what's that?
Mine doesn't recognize Texas. Isn't that weird?
It doesn't recognize Texas? Really? A little weird, but we'll go with it. So, you can put your cursor on the word, say it was spelling, and this was Texas, and you want to make sure that you spell Texas correct, and you do the Alt-S, it'll bring it up and check it for spelling.
Let's look at some of the proofreading tools that are built into Total Eclipse. You can start the spell check by clicking on an icon of a toolbar or selecting from the production menu. However, anytime you want to check the spelling of the word your cursor is on, just press Alt-S.
So Alt-S is going to bring up a box like this. So it's going to give you the word that you have if it's spelled correctly. So you can do a number of different things. You can check the definition. You can delete it. You can add it. You can add it to your dictionary. So now it's not going to underline it anymore. You can add it. You can change all if it's, every time it has, say this was Texas and she spelled it Texxas. Well, she went through to check it and it spelled Texas, not two X's. Okay? So every time that it comes up, you can go in there, and every time that it's in there, it'll change it. Okay? So every time, it won't stop on that, usually it won't stop on that word again. It'll automatically change it. So if it comes up on a word, say you're doing spell check or whatever, and you have Texas, okay, and it's not in your dictionary, and you talked about Texas 4,000 times in that document. If you don't tell it to ignore all, every time that Texas comes up, it's going to stop on Texas because it's not going to recognize it. So if you just push ignore, it's going to ignore it the one time. Okay? But if you push ignore all, every time Texas comes up, so say you have a name, Mr. Krzyzewski, okay? Well, you don't want it in your main dictionary, so you don't want to add it to your dictionary because maybe you're never going to hear that again, okay? So you don't want it in your dictionary, then you want to ignore all. And say it was the deposition of Mr. Krzyzewski and they said his name 45 times in that deposition. Then you're not going to want it to stop on Krzyzewski every time. Okay? So that's what it's asking you right here. So then you want to ignore all. When you ignore all, it's going to, every time Krzyzewski comes up, it's going to ignore it every time. Okay?
And if you're wondering whether two words could be properly joined as one, just mark the words and then press Alt-S. Then check the status bar in the lower left corner of your Eclipse program window.
You understand what it's telling you right there? So if you don't know if a word is supposed to be two words, one word, hyphenated, whatever, all you have to do is highlight it, push Alt-S, and it'll give you the suggestion down here. It is supposed to be one word. Iceberg, one word, two words here. one word is correct. Okay?
So just by doing Alt S brings up.
No, you're doing F7. So you mark it.
F7.
You mark the text.
Uh-huh.
So F7. So F7 is going to mark it once. F7 is going to mark the two words. So you're going to hit it twice. Or if you had iceberg already as one word, then you just have to push F7 once and it marks iceberg. But here you have iceberg. So you don't want to do F7 once and push Alt S because it's going to tell you ice is spelled correctly. You already know ice is spelled correctly. You just don't know if iceberg is spelled correctly, or if it's one word, or if it's hyphenated. Okay? You understand what I'm saying?
So you hit it
Yeah.
twice.
I'm sorry?
So you hit it F7 twice.
Well, because you want to mark two words.
Right.
So you push F7 twice
Right, for the two words.
to mark it.
Okay.
To mark it.
And then at that point, it gives you that information at the
No.
bottom. No?
That just marks it. Alt S is for spell check.
Okay.
So you have to mark it first, then push Alt S, and then that gives you this. Just marking it, it doesn't know what you want to do.
Right, right.
You may want to mark it, push delete, and it deletes those two words. So
Okay.
you can do a lot of things once you've marked it.
All right, let me see if
Okay.
I'm understanding. So I'm going to, let's say iceberg. I'm going to hit it twice because it's two words.
Yes.
Then I'm going to press Alt S to give me to see if it's
To see if it's spelled correctly.
Okay, got it.
If it's one word, two words, hyphenated. Y'all got that?
Sorry.
No, that's okay. I mean, I want you guys to understand. So don't feel like, you're asking a stupid question, because if you're thinking it, someone else is probably thinking it too.
You had pressed F7 3 or 4 times.
Yeah?
It would give you the whole, whatever has been highlighted.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I mean, you're not going to want to know if that's all one word. Iceberg of innumerable. It's not going to be one word. It's just going to tell you all of those words are correctly spelled, probably. I don't know that I've ever done it.
Okay.
Okay? But, I mean, it'll tell you that, if you have a question about particularly, well, is it particularly or E-R-L-Y? I can't remember if it's particularly or particularly. Particularly. So you can put your cursor here, or anywhere in the word, push Alt S, and it'll tell you whether it's spelled correctly. You in the back.
So to get this text to change, I press ignore all. And that'll get-
No, add. You want to add it.
Oh,
Make sure it's on the word. Push Alt S.
got it.
It took off the red? Okay. So if you know that it's spelled correctly, say your client's name is Mr. Krzyzewski. Okay? Well, he's one of your clients, and this isn't going to be the only deposition that you take for this cat. So you want to make sure that you add it in there so that every time it comes up, it puts it in there. And I'm telling you, it comes up with some crazy, crazy stuff. I mean, like proper names. It doesn't know like easy proper names sometimes. Like I think I did mine and Mary didn't come up. And it stopped on Mary, M-A-R-Y. Well, you're going to hear it again. I can almost promise you're going to hear it again. So you want to add it, you want to add it so that it doesn't keep stopping on it every time you do spell check. Okay?
When you're ready to spell check your entire document and not just individual words, you can get started by pressing Shift Alt S. However, let's see how you can go to the Edit section of your user settings and fine-tune the spell checker's behavior. By default, Eclipse checks for several kinds of errors. It also loads the words of your job dictionary in the ignored words list, so it won't have to ask you about them. When you finish spell checking, Eclipse keeps track of the words that you've been ignoring. This is great if you're spell checking several documents in the same case. But if you're switching to a different case, you might want to purge the ignored words. You also have the option to read along with the spell checker. If you use this method, here's where you can control the speed of the cursor. Basically, you'll be reading along for context while you let the computer catch things like double words, or too many spaces between words, or words to ignore, or double questions.
So it'll catch all of this stuff. Double questions, double answers, if you haven't put punctuation, too many spaces, you know, most of the time it'll catch it. So like, you know, if right here in between your dashes, you're supposed to have one space and you have two, it'll catch it. And it'll ask you, you know, what do you want to do with it? It'll open up that box. What do you want to do with it? Well, I want to delete the space, and it'll have a space in there. Or do you want to put a period? Do you want to put a comma? It'll ask you all that stuff.
Of course, you do not have to read along with the spell checker. And if you're looking for an even faster method, you might consider list errors, which is the subject of a separate presentation.
Any questions about that? So like double words, when they say, is it that you were talking about? Yes, it was that I was talking about. Well, it doesn't know that you didn't mean to put that. Okay, so it's going to stop on stuff like that. You know, when people are talking about what it is it's this, or it's what it is, it's the combination of this. So you have two is's in there, you know, and it's going to know to stop on that. So it stops on double words, double Q's, double A's, no punctuation, stuff like that. Okay. Any questions about that?
Yeah, how did we get to the last portion, the last part? How do we get there to check when you read along? We know what to read. You're going to read along with the.
Oh, it has a read along. It has a read along thing
Where do
on
we
there.
go for that again?
Let's look at some of the proofreading tools that are built where you can control the speed of the cursor. Basically, you'll be reading along for context while you let the computer catch things like double words, purge the ignored words. You also have the
Right here. So you go into your user settings,
User settings.
which is, how do you get into user settings? Alt-U.
Okay. Okay, and then I'm going to go to.
Let me back it up a little bit. I think it's modified dictionary or something like that.
user settings and find
Spell options. You're going to go to spell options. So if y'all all want to do it, go in there. Go into Alt-U, spell options.
I don't see spell options. Maybe I'm reading wrong.
It should be right up there. Go into Edit.
Oh, okay.
You're in Edit.
Now I am.
Spell options.
Okay, then read along with spell.
And then read along, yeah.
Okay,
Okay?
thank you.
Any questions about that? No? All right.
Let's see what list errors means. You'll find that option listed in the production menu, but you can also use the speed key, Shift Control E, as in errors. Eclipse will scan through your document and open a list of suspect items. Selecting any item will then show it to you in context. What makes this procedure a bit quicker is that although you can read the context, you don't have to. This is just a quick list of possible errors, so if you press the Ignore button, or change the spelling for one occurrence, or all occurrences of an item on this list,
Do you understand what it's telling you right there? So if you want to go through and check like proper names, stuff like that, this is where you can use that. Okay, so it's going to list your errors that it thinks that it knows that it's going to catch. So I mean, a lot of it is for proper names or whatever. So if you went through and you know, you spelled Mr. Hallbridge and it should have been Mr. Hallbridge, or maybe it was Halldridge with a D, Halldridge, Haldridge, then you can go through and change it in there, and then every time it has Hallbridge, it'll know to change it. If you do the change all. Okay? Understand? Want to back that up a little bit so you understand? No? Did I get it? All right.
Context, you don't have to. This is just a quick list of possible errors. So if you press the ignore button, or change the spelling for one occurrence, or all occurrences of...
Change all. Change all is what I was talking about. Okay? So every time it comes up, you want Hallbridge to say Halldridge, then it will. With the change all.
an item on this list, you're then free to move on to other items. From here, you can add words to your personal spelling list, look for suggested spelling alternates, or look for a definition.
You understand what that suggestion is? So say you have, they're talking about enuresis and encopresis. Okay, and I just had that in the document that I'm doing now. Okay, well, it's like enuresis, INURSIS, and it's going to tell me that it's wrong. You know, maybe I put it in there, it was wrong. I do spell check, I give it suggestions, and it'll bring up suggestions of what it thinks it is. And it's ENURSIS. It's ENURESIS, I believe, enuresis. Okay? So, whatever. I mean, it's going to give you the suggestions of what it thinks that you were trying to write right there. Okay?
You can even open the globaling dialog from this procedure, just as you can from the dialogues that are given to you through the spell check document procedure. So whether you want to do a meticulous read-through of your document or correct just a quick list of possible errors, there are great proofreading tools built right into Total Eclipse.
Any questions about that? Kind of self-explanatory, but, you know. Any questions? No? Okay, the good thing about this is that the spelling checker built into Total Eclipse contains hundreds of thousands of general, medical, legal, and technical terms. So it may know a lot of the stuff that you're putting in there, especially like legal terms, you know, when they're talking about pro se, you know, well, pro se. Is that P-R-O-S-A-Y, pro se? No, it's P-R-O-S-E, pro se. So it's Latin. You know, it's Latin, you know, to mean that you're going to represent yourself, pro se. Okay? So, I mean, it has all kinds of words, you know, but you can also make additions, deletions, modifications, or, you know, whatever you want to do. So once again, when you want to check a word, it's just Alt-S. Put your prompt on the word, whatever word you want. Maybe it's word. You don't know if it's W-E-R-D, word. So you put your prompt here. Alt-S will tell you whether it's spelled correctly, or it'll give you suggestions of what it thinks it is if it's not spelled correctly. So here they're kind of, this is kind of a little, you know, your turn or whatever. So they're saying, you know, they don't put your cursor on box, push Alt S, and it's going to tell you. It's going to give you the list of different spelling alternatives that it has, because it doesn't have box in there. Well, maybe they're talking about a box. Maybe it's the name of a company, and it's spelled B-O-X-X. What would you do there? You could add, you could ignore all, especially if they're talking about this company and the company is listed all in that thing. So all of those are correct. So you can add it if you want to, but just realize that it conflicts with the regular box. So if for some reason they were talking about a box at the box store, which is the box store, and it was spelled, they were picking up the box, B-O-X-X, at the box, B-O-X-S store, then it's not going to pick it up if you added it. Okay? Now, if you tell it to ignore all with the double X, then it's going to know that you did it. But if you add it to it, then it's going to know that B-O-X-X is the proper spelling all the time. Okay? You understand what I'm saying? I know what I'm trying to say. I don't know if I said it correctly or not, but anyway, that's how you do it. So Alt S, put your cursor on the word, and you can be anywhere in the word. You can be in the middle of the word. Alt S brings it up. It doesn't really matter. Okay? This is also a pretty good little thing right here, and I told you guys that also, is that Eclipse can also check the spelling of a word as you're typing. So as you're typing the word, it pretty much already has the underline under it, if it doesn't understand the first parts that you're putting in there. So it's going to be underlined like this, like Texas probably was in yours. So it's going to come up Texas with a red underline under it. So all of these words like, Hernandez, Gonzalez, that it doesn't know that you haven't added to your thing. When you type it in for the first time, it's going to be underlined. And it's not until you go in there and do spell check and add it if you need to, that it's going to take the underline away from it. But if you go through and, one of the kids in the thing that I'm doing, her name is Zamaya, and it's Z-A-M-I-A-H. Zamaya. Well, I can promise you it's not going to be in my spell check. Okay? So, and every time that I typed it, it's going to come out underlined. Well, I don't want it in my dictionary because I'm probably never going to hear that word again. Probably not. Unless I do this transcript again. But it's no big deal because you already have your dictionary built into it. So it already knows that it's correct. So when you read your dictionary into the other 6 days, because you used it on the first day, it's already going to know that it's correct. Do you understand what I'm saying there? Okay? All right. Pretty neat thing right there. Okay, and if you want to go into the document and do the whole document, that's Shift Alt S, or it should have it up here, and it doesn't. On mine it does. This is the tutorial or whatever. So, but up here it has a spell check little icon. So if you want to spell check, just come up here, press spell check. So what you want to do is if you're at the bottom of the document, you do. How do you go to page? So if I want to go to page 1, how do I go to page 1? Anyone? Bueller?
Okay, I did Shift G.
Huh?
Shift G.
What does that do?
It's gonna go to certain page. Scroll down.
Shift G?
Go to page and it asks for a line too.
No, it's Alt G. Alt G is go to page.
You know what? Shift G does the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
It sure does. I've never used Shift G, so very good.
So
I learned something tonight, and thank you guys. Alt G is go to page, Shift G is go to page. You put whatever page, top of the document, go to number 1, come up here to the icon, spell check, and then it starts spell checking it from there. Or you go up there and you do Shift Alt S, and then that tells the software that you want to check the entire document, not just one word. Okay? Any questions? Excellent.
Let's see some of the ways that Automagic helps you prevent spelling errors as you work. Word reversals are just one of the small problems that Automagic understands. This question should have been, is she still working there? Pressing 5 is a fast way to reverse these words. This should have been working, but I need a different suffix. Pressing 2 here would be a fast way to pick suffix ing. Here's another suffix problem. This should have been on the form. Yes. Pressing 3 makes that correction. And now Automagic sees that I may need a comma in front of yes. Pressing a comma would quickly insert the comma in the proper spot. Compound words are another problem. Sometimes it may be that 2 words need to be joined as one, or that 1 word needs to be split into 2. Pressing choice 1 here corrects this unintended compound. This should have been she was out standing in the field. A typing error occurred, and the faint underlining in red is calling that to your attention as you type. The correction is also being offered on the Automagic list. Just press 9. Automagic also integrates type over tracking. My Steno for Technological and my Steno for Tool are very close to one another, so I tend to replace one of these words with the other. Eclipse tracks that type over, and Automagic offers it as a choice. If I press 7, that makes the correction, and here again Automagic is watching for punctuation that might need to be inserted. One last correction here. Let's assume that this is not misspelled, but the reporter didn't have an alphabet that included hyphens. Pressing 3 would stitch with hyphens. Pressing 4 would actually correct the spelling. If I just go back, pressing 3 would now stitch this spelling. These are just some of the ways that Automagic takes advantage of the spelling checker and type over tracking features built into Eclipse.
We've already kind of seen that little video that they showed, but they're kind of doing it because it's on the spell check side of it or whatever, so they showed it again. So, do you have any questions about that?
On the punctuation,
Mm-hmm.
does it only work for the Q&A, or will it work for when you're doing literary or I'm drawing blanks here, I'm sorry, jury charge?
What do you mean?
Like, I guess when you put your cursor, you know how it gave you the option, it gave you up their punctuation,
Mm-hmm.
and it put in the comma. Will that work also when you're editing your jury charge or your testimony?
It may not.
Just
It may
the
not because
Q&A?
it works more like on Q&A. But it's not real hard because, you know, if you go into the document,
Let's see, makes the correction. And here
you know,
again,
say you're right here in the document, it doesn't really matter. You put your cursor right there, and you know you want to put the comma. That was where, comma, that doesn't took place. Doesn't really make sense, but I'm just giving you an example. You just press comma when you're in hyperkeys, it automatically puts a comma, so it's not that big of a deal. So as you're following along, it's real easy to put punctuation anyway. But if you leave out punctuation, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, if I leave out a
No,
punctuation.
because it's not going to know, like in a literary, how long that sentence is. So if it's a run-on sentence, it's not going to say, well, I think you need a period right here because the sentence has gone too long.
So
No.
that will only work in Q&A.
Pretty much, yeah. Pretty much.
So I'm assuming if we see that on number 1, then it's trying to tell us we are.
Well, and it may work on your literary too. If you have catchwords like no, yes, you know, stuff where, you know, it usually needs a comma, then it may do it. You know, I just don't do literary anymore, so I have no idea. You know, well, like on a run-on sentence, you know, sometimes it'll give you, you know, if it says, you know, they're going through a whole myriad of explaining something or whatever, and it has the yes. Most of the time, the yes needs a comma, so you know, it may give you that option. Okay.
Is that all you do is Q&A?
Yeah. Every day.
You don't have a jury, right?
No.
So you don't have a jury charge?
Yeah, we don't. I don't do. We don't do juries. So I mean, I don't do a jury charge. I don't do voir dire, any of that stuff anymore. And it's been a long time. God, it's been. December will be 19 years since I've done voir dire or whatever. So, you know, it's been a long time. But, so no, I don't, you know, have to do any of the jury charges or stuff like that. That's what I'm saying. I don't know if it does it anymore or not, because the stuff that I do just about every day is Q&A. Okay. Any questions about any of that? All right. Okay, the indexing, I think we're going to skip, guys. This is really, really confusing. And I have, you know, a buddy of mine, and he came and spoke last year about doing the auto indexing, and it's really confusing. You almost have to go and take a seminar through Eclipse to understand exactly, and he's done it. I mean, I'll try to get that guy to come and speak one night about it or whatever, but I mean, he doesn't even hardly use it. And this he's a Eclipse guru, pretty much. I mean, when I get stuck on stuff, I usually call him a lot of times rather than calling support. So, I mean, he knows a lot about a lot, but this auto indexing is just, it's really confusing. I mean, if you want to go through it, we can watch that tutorial, but I mean, it's really confusing, and I think it does you more harm than it does good, but.
You obviously don't use it.
I don't use it. I do not.
What generally would be the purpose of indexing?
Well, you like every time there's a direct examination, cross-examination, it already lists it. So it'll go back and list it for you on the page when you do your auto indexing. So you don't have to go back and put examination by so-and-so, cross-examination by so-and-so. Huh?
I don't even know what that is, so that wouldn't even be.
And we're going to do it. We're going to do the indexing, but it's going to be a lot, you know, more simple than, you know, what they do there. I just think you're going to get more confused than anything, so I'm going to skip it and maybe get him to come talk about it. So we're going to talk about printing and ASCII backups and stuff like that. Okay, so you can be anywhere in the document. I'm going to